Hi. Yes, as you just saw me talking and there was no sound coming out because I muted that channel. Haha. But now I'm better. There we go. Hooray. I remembered to hit the record button this time, so that's one step at a time, baby steps. Look at the little bits! Ah, thank you! Oh, thank you. I tried to dress snazzy when I give my classes. No boring shirts for me. But yes. So oh, the men's department. They have cool patterns on shirts. I'm like, heck yeah. I like those. Those are great. I have wide shoulders, they'll fit. Oh yeah, and they come in like bags and stuff. They're great. They're long. Okay. We can totally rant about that in Discord later. But yes, for I saw there was a question going, "Oh, when's she gonna get her emotes?" Well, that is a thing I'm working on this weekend, as I just got official as of this Tuesday when this is recording, because this recording is also going to be going up on YouTube, which I do have the first one up. I'm going to be posting a link to that this afternoon. So that link will be there, and then this one will probably be going up, if not tonight, probably sometime tomorrow, because I forgot how long videos take to upload to YouTube. But I did have someone give me advice on how to do it faster, so hooray. So this weekend I will be learning how to make emotes for the first time in my life, because I figured, well, I'm an artist, I draw, I should probably make my own emotes. So I think when you start you get like 3. So hooray, that'll be fun. Oh, okay. Hooray! Yay, emotes. So, today's class, we are going to be using watercolor. We're going to make this lovely picture of tulips because it's going to be springtime, even though it's dreary out. It did rain all day yesterday. My dog was not happy about that whatsoever. Get some light here going. Lights aren't fit. There we go. Now I have light. I am lit now. Yay! We're going to be using some watercolor. Now, there are lots of, like, fancy watercolors out there. Like, let me go in here. I have my art supplies really close. Getting in your face. Like, I have this super duper fancy watercolor set. Look at that. It's been well loved. It's got these fancy little paint pots. We're not using those. I'm not going to make people go to the art store and buy super fancy watercolors. We're just painting a picture. We're practicing. We're going to do fun stuff today. So, I want for something that I know a lot of people probably have and or are easy to get. One of these. Let me make sure I didn't open it and have it all fall on me. No, you can totally get... If you have fancy watercolors, you are totally allowed to use them. But I wanted to do my example using one of these. Those little sets that people will like give to kids and stuff at Christmas time. Because there was this big old debate on artist Twitter. Yeah, would you like to see the stuff? On artist Twitter about, oh, those sets are crummy and you can't do anything with them. Well, I beg to differ. I did this using these crummy little watercolors right here. And they're actually not that bad. This is the Creatology pack. Yeah, they've gotten way fancier these days. Like, this is way nicer than the one I got when I was, like, 10. So, but I also, they have, like, coupons at Michael's. So I think this whole thing ended up costing me, like, $12, $15, like, and it came in one of my favorite colors, teal, my booth color. Haha. So I'm gonna pull out my supplies because the first thing we always talk about is what supplies are we using. I'm gonna pull out my watercolors, and I don't really need anything else that's in here. I would like to use the oil pastels at some point for a project, because oil pastels was a thing I like to use in art class. So, I've got my watercolors. Now, this one had a bit of a list, rather than... Yeah, see those molded plastic ones? That's the one I had when I started, and look where I am now. So, see? That's where I started. You can do it too. I had on the syllabus, if you guys saw it, so there was, oh, I apologize, touched my face, probably shouldn't be doing that. There was a printout on the second page. It looks like this. We're going to learn a new skill today, and that is transferring your image to your watercolor paper. And this is actually a technique I use for sometimes like when I'm doing marker work on Bristol board or when I'm doing like a watercolor occasionally. Oh, yeah, it's on the second page. I'm sorry. I tried to like put it in the list if it wasn't very clear. That's why I'm saying it first, and then I'm going to go over the rest of my stuff so you can just kind of listen in while I'm talking about supplies. I printed it actual size, so it should be 5x7 when it prints out. It's all good. That's why I said, that's why I listed it first. So this way we don't have to take a lot of extra time like drawing the picture. It's already been drawn. We're more interested in can we fill it in with watercolor. Also, because watercolor paper is really thick, it's hard to do some of my more standard transfer methods. One of the cheapest ways you can do, like let's say you drew a picture, you really like it, but you want to color it in on something nicer. Like you want to put it on some Bristol board or put it on a different piece of paper. You can take your picture you drew, put it underneath the paper you want, and then you put it up on a window. And then you can like see through that paper. I can't reach it over here. Let's see. Yeah. And then the light will shine through the back, and then you can trace onto the good paper. Also, if you happen to have a light table, but not all of us have light tables. A lot of us have windows. Windows are cheaper. You just like tape it to the window and then trace it. That's what I did back in the day. So, but watercolor paper is really, really thick. So, let me see if I can pull this light back over here. There we go. It's like, it's hard to see through. So, we're going to do the transfer method. So, you can use this in a whole bunch of things. So, we get to learn a new skill today. And this is one of the reasons why I want to do a lot of these classes, is to teach new tiny skills so then you can take them and apply them to other projects in other ways. So other things, I have my handy dandy, very highly advanced water bucket, the good old cheese bucket. I bought some watercolor paper. You can use just about any type. There's a whole bunch out there on the market. Because we're just doing a basic practice, you can pick whichever one you want, whatever's on sale. They had these handy dandy little tiny ones. Sorry for the cough. I should have vampire coughed. Now, me being a bad example. Don't cough in your hands, kids. Cough like a vampire. Like that. I will do that from now on. I forgot completely. So I bought this because I only wanted to do like a little 5x7. And so I found these little Strathmore watercolor pages. I picked Strathmore because this is what I use on all my sketchbooks. It's just a personal preference. You don't have to use it. It's also the dab cough. But I like the vampire cough. But anyway, so I have these little watercolor sheets. I liked them because they were really close to 5x7. I like 5x7 because it's the size you can put in a frame, which I will have a little rant about that in a moment when we prepare our watercolor paper for the size it needs to be. Because for some reason, Strathmore decides to make their book 5.5 by 8.5. Because totally frames come in that size. I mean, I guess it's so you could put it on a mat board and then stick that mat board in a frame, but you could still put the 5x7 in a mat board. Whatever, Strathmore. Talk to me later, Strathmore. Bone me. So, another thing I had on my list was a piece of board. Something that you're going to want to tape down your image to. And this is called stretching the canvas, basically. It's not a canvas, though. It's a piece of paper. But I just like to use, this is actually an old back of one of my Bristol board packs. It could be a notepad. It could be a hardboard. It could be like a clipboard, if you have it. Just something that you can tape your watercolor to. Then, remember my brushes from the first video. I have these. Same brushes I used last time. They're going to work just the same. I have my tape. I'm using blue painter's tape because I have it all around because I use it in cosplay to make like molds and stuff. But this or masking tape, as long as it's something that will peel off easily off of paper. Painter's tape is usually pretty gentle on things. I like the blue tape because then I can see it. A ruler. Because I have to actually trim down the paper. Because Strathmore. Also, if you happen to have a really big piece of paper, then you can like trim it down further. A pair of scissors. Not your sewing scissors. Not your parents' sewing scissors, not your siblings' sewing scissors. If you happen to have sewing scissors for doing anything, just know. Use your craft scissors. These are my craft scissors. Anyone who does sewing will know the joke. Do not touch the sewing scissors. Yeah, I see over there Rebecca saying, my fabric shears are hidden. Yes, thank you, Trish. You understand. Do not touch the fabric scissors. As we're all cosplayers in here, we understand. That's in my chat room that you don't see in the video. Use your craft scissors. Be careful. They're sharp, obviously. If you are a younger person, you may need parental supervision to do this. If you are an older person, just don't run with them. Be careful. Let's not injure ourselves. We want to make art, not with our own blood. That's for cosplay. I see in all caps, do not touch the sewing scissors. That is true, very true. We all know. Other things I had on my list. Wow, I totally blanked on what this was. I'm like staring at it. A pencil sharpener. That thing that makes the pencil sharp. A pencil sharpener. I like to use the hand ones because when I'm doing like colored pencils and stuff, putting those into electric pencil sharpeners could damage the lead. But I also use really fancy pencils, so your miles may vary. I have a drawing pencil. How'd you dye your costume a dark shade of red? Looks at manager. Wasn't my original plan. There's a funny adage that goes with cosplay is like, if you bleed on it, it's been blessed. So it becomes lucky. I have specks hidden on the insides of costumes. Like, yep, it's my lucky blood spot. Ask any cosplayer, they'll tell you. So I have, this is a turquoise drawing pencil. Well, turquoise is just like the brand name. But this is a B pencil. It's a soft pencil. I put just like a regular 2B pencil. Mostly you just want a pencil that you can sharpen. Not, preferably not a mechanical pencil, and you'll see why in a little bit. Oh man, sewing things that is white is just like minefield. And then last but not least, a ballpoint pen. Not an ink pen, not like a Pilot pen that has like the little inkwell that comes out. It needs to be a ballpoint pen. And the reason is we're not going to be worried about the ink that comes out. We need the pressure of the pen, and then the ink just tells us where the pen has been. And you'll see in just a little bit how that works. So, with that, it's time to don the smock and get ourselves ready. Oh, so you're just safe, Sentry. You play it safe. The rest of us, we're just like, let's put pins everywhere. On the apron of goodness, because I like this shirt. And, well, watercolor is pretty safe. I just don't want to get it on this nice shirt, because it's one of my favorite shirts. Alright. And we are ready to get started. So I'm going to switch to my art tabletop, which looks like a hot mess right now because I have all my supplies I just talked about on it. So let's go over there. Whoa, throwing stuff all over. Dr. Pepper runs through my veins. Well, not really anymore. I wish it did, but I can't have as much caffeine anymore. So the first thing we need to do is we are going to prepare our paper. That requires me measuring this. So for some reason in these notebooks, the first page always sticks to the front. I just leave it there. I'm not going to mess with it. I'm not going to fight that. So I have my watercolor paper. I'm going to carefully bend it open. Gently pull it out. Gently pull it out. Come on, paper. I'll write you. I'm trying to not bend the paper. That's really what this is about. And there's some glue left on the edge here. Try and see if I can peel it off. But on the bright side, I'm going to be cutting most of this off, because it needs to be 5x7. So I get to cut a 1/2 inch off of one of these edges. Probably the side that has all the glue bits, because that's efficient. Then I like to get a second piece, or if you're using a larger piece of paper, save your scrap. I like to have a scrap piece of paper. Oh, this one came out much nicer. We're going to use this one to paint on. This is going to be your scrap. Having an extra piece of paper nearby allows you to test your colors and see how they work before you put them onto your image. I do the same thing when I color with marker. That's not a pencil, that's a paintbrush. That's not going to help me at all. I went reaching for my paintbrush and... Alright, so I'm going to take my ruler. And it is 5.5 wide. I need it to be 5. Now, in my instructions, I did mark, if you don't have a ruler on hand, and you need to get a new one, I personally love these grid rulers. They're set to the US sizing, so we've got, the inches and whatnot. But I love them because they're set to a grid. The big lines, those are the inches. Then the little lines, those are the 1/2 inch. And then they keep going in half down each way, and they're all equal. And then, because you can see through it, you can just line it up straight with the edge right here. So I'm just going to put a little line at the end. And then I can take that line, match my edge of the paper, and just gently draw a light line down the edge. Is my paper crooked? Maybe. There's a chance of that. Yeah, I think the edge of it's crooked. That's fine. I'm going to get a nice straight line at the end. So now, I'm going to measure the length of my page. This tells me that it is 8.5. I want that to be 7. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. It says 7 right here. I'll mark one little mark on the top of the ruler and one on the bottom where it says 7. And now I have 2 little dash marks. I can then match those 2 up. Measure up the edge of the line here. Boop. And now I have this area here. Oh, you saw my face there. I'm so sorry. My little hair got in the way. This is going to be my 5x7. So now I'm going to set my pencil to the side. Oh no! Yeah, sometimes paper can be finicky like that. I really wish that there was a pad of paper that was here it is, 5x7. I want to make something that'll fit into a frame, so if you really like your picture, you can then hang it on your wall. Well, I was disappointed that all the tiny pads of paper were weird sizes that didn't fit in frames. That's one of the reasons why whenever I make pictures when I'm doing my Artist Alley tables, I always make sure they print out in frame size, because I like to hang my pictures I buy on the wall. Oh, excellent. Cool. Okay. So now I have my 5x7. Now it is time to place my watercolor paper onto my board. I'm going to get my board. And it doesn't have to be perfect on the board, just somewhere in the center is fine. Good. And I always like to start at the top. It's just my personal preference. You can start wherever you want. It's okay if you're the only one talking. It's all good. And I take a strip that's longer than the side I want to start on, so I'm going to start on the top. And I'm going to cover maybe like 1/4 of an inch. Just so I have a tiny bit of a white edge when I'm done. And then I'm going to press it down nice and hard so it is flush with the paper. That way no water is going to get in here, and we're going to get that super cool white border when we're done painting. Then I will proceed to go around the rest of the painting and do the same thing. I try to keep all my edges about the same size. And if your edges aren't all the same size, that's totally fine. It is a trial and error experience. Also, what this does is this will prevent the watercolor paper from buckling too job. I'm reading. Too bad. Too much. It'll still bubble up a little bit, but this will keep it from completely curling, as we're going to use a lot of water on this, given that it's watercolor, as opposed to the acrylic, which doesn't need as much water. That's why my picture looks funny. My camera's tilted. There we go. That's a little better. And then I'll put my last and final piece of tape on here. Whoop. That happens sometimes. That's why you should pull from the center and push it down. There we go. Now I have a happy canvas. But now we need to get our tulips onto this canvas. I picked tulips because they're one of my favorite springtime flowers. I love them. They've got such a fun shape. They were one of my favorite flowers to draw in art class, so I figured why not introduce everyone to tulips. So I'm going to set this to the side. And we are now going to get our printout out. And we're going to get our pencil. If you need to sharpen it, you want to make sure you got a good side of lead to look at. I love flowers too. Flowers are one of my, they're so pretty. I just wish I was better at growing them. So I love them. Oh, you're making a plant stand? That's so cool. I have, I wish I could remember what the name was. I planted some plants in my front yard that should hopefully bloom this spring, so I don't have to keep replanting them, and I'm so excited. Okay, so you can kind of see a little bit through my paper because I'm just using regular printer paper. I'm going to take the side of my pencil and I'm going to rub all across the back of this to color it in pretty dark. Mostly I want to cover up where the lines are. This is where I'm aiming. So I'm not going to fill it all in, and then if you do run out of lead, you can always resharpen your pencil. And this is why I wanted a regular hand sharpening pencil, because it's hard to do this with a mechanical pencil. Not gonna lie. And I like to color it in pretty dark, nice and solid. First time I did this, it is really light, so we're definitely going to make this darker this time so we can see it. Because the one nice thing is that these, oh, I forgot one other important tool I did not talk about in the beginning was the ink pen. But we'll talk about that when we get there. I apologize to people who are watching the video later. There is a outlining pen I was going to talk about. Sometimes when people do watercolor, Oh yeah, coloring outside of the lines is totally okay. That happens with watercolor sometimes. It can be very finicky. It is water, after all. Um, Sometimes people will ink a picture and then paint it, and sometimes people will paint a picture and then ink it. We're doing the latter, as opposed to the former. Yeah, that's the words I'm looking for. Alright. So I have my picture all graphited, filled in. Looks pretty fuzzy right now. Looks kind of like tulips, but not really. Mostly I want to make sure it's all covered, fuzzy. As long as I cover all those lines, that's what I'm looking for. Nice and dark. Alright. Set that to the side. And you can always like hold up your picture to like a piece of light and see and make sure if you've covered it all. Looks like I missed a little. Down here. Now there are fancier ways to do this. Like there's like cool stuff called like carbon paper and things like that, but we got tools. We don't need expensive paper. We got smarts. Now comes the next step. Once you have put all the graphite on the back, you then take it and you can place your image and overlay it onto where your canvas is. Now what's fun is because in theory your board is a different color than your watercolor paper. You can even see it on the screen right now. You can see the outline of where my watercolor paper is versus where my tulips are. So I'm going to set those there, and then I'm going to take a little bit of my tape, and at the top of the page, I'm going to tape that down. I might even tape the bottom down if I'm feeling, yes, as I'm just seeing now in my chat that you're not seeing on the video, so I apologize. Sentry posts, if you have a glass end table or a coffee table in the house, you can also have a light under that. That is also a quick and easy way to have a light table. So now I have my board, my image ready to be transferred. I'm going to try to not touch it too much because I don't want to get too much graphite on there. And now comes time for my pen. Now what you're going to do with the pen, first I'm going to take my spare watercolor paper. I'm going to go in the corner and make sure my pen works. Excellent. Or I could try it on the piece of paper. Yes, my pen works. Good. Excellent. Do make sure your pen works first. And what's nice is if you have it in a different color, so like this one is blue, but black is fine. Any color works. And you are going to trace and pressing down onto the paper. I'm going to take my tape up for a sec so you can see it. When you press down and trace it, it's going to transfer the graphite onto your watercolor paper. And it's a little bit of a slow process. And if it's not exact, that is totally okay. Watercolor paper is a little bumpy. Even when I'm tracing my own, it still kind of wobbles around. I find that it gives it character. Makes it look a little more artsy. My personal favorite pens to outline these sorts of things with is like if I have a red pen or like a vibrant green pen or something like that, so then I can really see what I've outlined. But I didn't have any of those on hand, so I went with blue. I got one tulip done. I'm gonna get the next blade behind it. I also like tulips because they were a nice, simple shape that was recognizable, that we could easily fill in, that had big petals. A lot of flowers have a lot of itty-bitty petals, which, if you happen to stop by my social media, you'll see all of my little zodiac flowers. Oh my good lord, so many petals. So many things. Those were all done in a marker. And while we are inking these and transferring these to the paper, I do want to let people know that oh, I just got a compliment. Oh, thank you. Oh, no, that's okay. My tracing is kind of wobbly. You just can't see it because it's very far away. It is totally fine. Everyone's lines are unique, and it is all good. There are all sorts of ways that lines can appear, and honestly, I think they're all beautiful. And then I had another one here that says that it's the best art class because the teacher isn't yelling at other students. Oh, well, thank you. No, I think that a lot of art is very much like a personal journey, and that we're all on our own journey, and we're just at different spots. Some of us are faster at things, and some of us are a little slower at things, and that's okay. And we'll all get there eventually. I'm really bad at pottery. Like, that's one of those things. Like, I have tried and tried, and I just can't figure it out. I broke 3 cups in a kiln. I couldn't make it. So I just admire people who do pottery. And I know that maybe that's just not my journey. But I like buying pottery. I think they're beautiful. I was just having a conversation with people the other day about knitting. I am utterly fascinated by people who knit and do crochet and like click clack those knitting needles together and make shirts. I think it's magic. And what's nice about art, this is gonna have a little bit of feelings put in here. The thing about art is everybody will have something different that they really jive with. And that's one of the things I want to do with these classes is that I want to show a lot of different techniques on how to do things so that everybody gets a chance to try something different, to do a sample of a little bit of everything. And maybe they'll find something that really sticks with them and they go, this is really fun. I want to do more of this. So if there's anything that people have an interest or want to learn, let me know. Leave a comment, send, tag me and stuff. I'm on Twitter, I have a Facebook page. I can't guarantee that I'll get to all the projects, but I'm always interested in what people are like, well, how do I do this? What are these things? I know for the next, at least one of the next classes, I want to do shading, and I want to do some printmaking with styrofoam. Okay, so now I took my thing off. Look at this beautiful transfer I have. It worked out so much better than the last one. The last one was really, really light. So, good for me in making it dark. So I'm going to put my my drawing to the side here so I don't accidentally put graphite all over my hands, which I usually want to do. I can put my tape to the side now. I don't need that anymore. I don't need my ruler anymore. I can get that out of the way. I don't need my ballpoint pen. I'm going to move all the things I don't need out of the way so I don't accidentally grab them when I'm trying to do things. Exactly. Sometimes you want to do all the things, and maybe you're not like the best at one thing, but you can do a lot of things, and that's okay too. That is totally okay. You don't have to have one main goal in life. I know a few people who are very much like, I'm not really sure what I want to do, but I enjoy doing many things, and that's okay. Alright, so now we're going to get our extra piece. I'm going to show you a couple of cool things, and then we're going to move on to the actual art piece. I'm going to show you some watercolor magic. So before we start, I'm going to show you some techniques. I'm going to get my big old brush here. First technique is called a wash. And if you've not done watercolors, okay, watercolor, open up. I opened you yesterday. There we go. I have these little protective plastic doohickeys on top of them. Well, if you want to learn to do all the things real well, just lots and lots of practice. I have been taking many art classes over the years. I actually got the chance to work in an art studio for a while, and I taught art camps and classes, which is why when all this was going on and I heard kids were at home, and I was like, my time has come. I want to teach art classes for people who need some time to work on things other than just, you know, math and science and reading. Okay, so the nice thing about watercolor is you get to use a lot of water. It's in its name. When your watercolor palette dries out, all you gotta do, put more water on it. That's how watercolors work. They're pigments that are dried out, and you put some water in it. Get your brush with color on it, and it's very watery. Now take in mind, this means it's going to dry slow. It's also very transparent. So see how very wet that is. But it's also very thin. So a couple things you can do. There's one that's called a wash. A wash is when you take a clear brush full of water, no paint in it, and you paint with water first. So your paper is wet. You can kind of see it. It's a little shiny. Well, I'm glad that I did too. Thank you. I'm glad that people are enjoying it. I'm going to pick a random color here. Let's do this cool turquoise over here. Wet this down so I can grab a lot of the pigment. I will say, though, the cheaper the material, the more difficult it is to get some of the pigment out, but that happens. Gotta work it. So then I take my color onto my wash area, and it becomes much easier to spread out. See how nice and light that is? This is how you do large areas. This is like backgrounds. This is the technique we're going to use to do a background. So that's called a wash. That's just like basic stuff. Just like putting the paint onto the paper. So another cool technique that I don't know if we'll get to use, I did put it on the list, but if you don't have it, it's totally okay. I don't know if the colors are going to be dark enough. But this is a thing I learned in my art classes. It's just a fun little technique. Let me get a nice dark color. If you ever want to do like a cool texture, this nice dark blue area. What you can do, you can take a little bit of salt, not a ton, just a little tiny bit, and on your wet paint, you can dabble the little salts on, and then you wait a little bit. And as the paint dries, it's going to cause like a little resistance of the paint to happen around it. And then that'll make cool little sparkles. It works a little better if your salt is bigger, like if you've got sea salt. And then another fun one, which this was not on the list, but I do like to show it. It works better if you have a candle. Put a white crayon will do. Take a white crayon. Because really, you're just looking for anything that's wax. And I drew a little picture of a heart. I'm going to take some of this pink here. Oh, come on. And it resists it. So that's a cool technique you can always use if you want to make like colors and stuff. So those are cool things. So now let's get on to our actual painting, because we've been going for a little while here. Let's get on to actually doing our assignment. So what I wanted to do was kind of like a morning sun. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a wash. Yes. Easter egg method. That's exactly what you do. Using the wax on it. It's what you do when you like draw on your Easter eggs. So I'm going to do a wash starting in the upper left-hand corner. Taking my paintbrush, my big one, big old Bertha here, filling it with water, and I'm just going to paint with the water starting in the upper corner, and I'm actually going to cover up a little bit of where my tulips are. I'm not going to go the whole thing, but just a little bit. So you can see I'm trying to get the shine onto it. And what's nice about watercolor is because it is transparent. It's going to just cover up over top of each other and make this really cool effect. I'm trying to think of words. Words are hard. So the first thing I'm going to put on is I'm going to put on this light yellow color. So if you have a yellow in your palette, this is when you would put a whole wash of yellow. I'm going to put a bunch of pigment on my brush. And just fill in the whole area yellow. And if I go into a little bit of my tulips, that's okay. Those are going to be covered in green and red. And no one's going to see it. So it's really pale right now, and that's okay. Because then I'm going to go and take an orange, which I think most of the multicolor palettes will have an orange. A nice bright orange. I tried to use as many like basic colors that a lot of the palettes would have. This one actually has quite a few. Get a lot of pigment on there. And then I'm going to start in the left corner and kind of brush down and outwards. Like this. So it makes a little bit of a burst. Then I'm going to clean my brush. Dry it out just a little bit. And then brush it down to try and blend it out. And then brush back and forth till I get to the top. And if I need to add any more orange, I can always go and do that along the edges. Because I like to put a little bit of dark near the edge of where my tape will be, because then that'll make a really nice border. So it's a nice morning sun. That's the nice thing about watercolors. You always just do like little layer to little layer until you get the color that you want. So, unfortunately, watercolor takes a little bit of time. Another reason why I really appreciate people who do a lot of watercolor, because I just do not necessarily have the patience for a lot of it. But I appreciate you. I see you out there doing the watercolors. And then if it's dark enough and you want, you can always drop some little salts on there. Which I'm going to try. Give Give it kind of a photographic sparkle effect. And then unfortunately we have to sit there and stare at it for a little bit, waiting for that to dry. That's the problem with watercolor. You have to stare at it for a while. Sometimes I blow air on it to make it dry faster. Because the problem is, if you go to do the next color while it's wet, it'll just blur all over, and then you're just sad. At least I get sad, because then I'll go, oh no, my color, it's escaped. Alright, where did this one go? Somewhere in here. Get in there, crayon. There we go. Okay. What I'll do is I like to kind of lift it up, see if it's shiny, that means it's still wet. Now what's nice is because it's up here, I can start doing some of these greens down here while this part dries. So that's also why I didn't want to color in the whole thing with a wash. So I'm gonna put away my big giant paintbrush. I'm gonna get my mid-sized one. This one, right here. We had this in the other video. Gonna put a lot of water on it. And because tulips are a nice, like, summer green color, I'm gonna pick this light green that I have here. Put a lot of water in there. Get it nice, full. I get a lot of pigment out of it. Now, the one thing you want to be careful of when you go to paint with your watercolor is that there's not too much water in your brush, because otherwise it just becomes a giant puddle and it just goes everywhere. So that's what I like to use these extra papers for. That's a nice color. I think that'll be real good. Then I can have it in there. I'm going to paint the front of this. So now you may have noticed, as we begin to paint our tulips and their leaves, that as we're painting over our pencils, they're not blurring. And that's because the pencils are not water soluble, which means that they do not bleed when they get wet, which is awesome for us because then it gives a nice outline that we can use and that we don't have to worry about it blurring on us or anything. There are some pens that are water soluble that when you go to paint over them will just become really fuzzy. I'm just filling in all my leaves here. There's a lot of them. Oh, my paint's starting to dry out. Aw, that's okay. I appreciate the want to have bits. I'm looking forward to doing more on my channel. I've got a lot of ideas. 'Cause I like playing games and I like sharing art. And I feel like that's a good thing I can do here. So there's a lot of these leaves. As you see, I kind of started from the right and I'm just moving in. I'm going to feel my paper. My paper seems kind of dry now. I'm going to brush off the salt. I don't want to put that in my brush. There we go. I don't know if I can see the dots, but that's okay. The thought is there. I tried. And you know what? Sometimes when you try a technique, it doesn't work out. and that's okay. You tried it, you can try again later. A lot of art is about experimenting, seeing what works, and sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you get happy little mistakes, sometimes you accidentally color something the wrong color, and now it's purple. And you know what? You'll roll with it. Now also, don't be afraid to paint all the way to the edge of where your masking tape is. That's why we put the masking tape down. And if your paint looks a little splotchy, that is totally okay, because that is what watercolor looks like. It gives it character, it gives it style. Mine's usually got little blotches and paint strokes. That's the word I'm looking for. Paint strokes. Go in here on the stock on this one. Whoop, I'm running out of water in my paint here. Better add some more. I also really wanted to use these like cheapy kind of watercolors just to be like, look, oh, I'm out of focus. There we go. Is it better now? Let me try this. How's that? I'm still learning how this all works. It sometimes tries to autofocus and I'm trying to tell it not to, and if I move my hands too close to it, it goes, oh, I should focus on that. And I'm like, no, please don't. I would just like to show them the art, please. There we go. Oh, good. That's better. Fantastic. I am glad. Terribly sorry about that. I am still learning the ropes. Yeah, my webcams are still liking to do that. Oh, let me focus that for you. And I'm like, please no. So I will apologize to anyone watching this video later if it happens to go out of focus occasionally. But I will stop and pause and show you all the areas that I colored in green. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my green again. I'm going to leave it a little bit thicker. Feel my paper. Okay, it's kind of dry. And all the places that I started painting first, all the stuff that's in the background, I'm going to go over once more a second time and make it slightly darker. So like this one back here. Starting all the way on the right. Add a little more water to it. It's a little too dry. And then there's this little spot line here. To make that nice and dark. In between here. Oh, I forgot a line, but that's okay. I'll fake it. Because what's nice about watercolors, because it is transparent, the more layers you put on something, the darker it becomes. So like this little inside part between these two tulips here, I can do many layers and make that nice and dark. Or if you happen to be lucky and have a paint palette that has extra dark areas, you can just get a dark green and just slap that in there. Oh, well, thank you. I'm glad that you love this class. You are most welcome. I am just so happy that people came to join me and are having a good time. That makes my soul happy. I love art so much, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's just dumb and why would you need to do that?" But it can be really relaxing, and I find it good for the soul. Being able to make something with your hands, even if it's not like perfect, like you made that, that's yours. That came from you. And that's powerful. Like I just have so many feelings about it. I'm gonna do one more layer on that in between because I want that to be really dark. And like the other thing, like so other feelings I have on art, just like people like try to think of it as like, ooh, it's a secret. Like, no, you can't. You gotta go to all these special things and no, art's for everyone. I have no secrets. I just want to share it with the world. Everyone can do art. Alright, so I now have my greens. Next up, last but not least, we're going to do our reds. Aw, it's so good to know. I see I have ADHD and I love doing things with my hands and I love art. Aw, that's awesome. I love doing art. It can get it's just so hands-on and very therapeutic. Alright, so I picked red tulips because they're nice and vibrant and, well, they're the opposite color of green. And they'll stand out from the yellow-orange background. Another good color, if you don't want to do red, you can do purple. Some tulips are purple. There are also like yellow tulips, but they might get eaten by the background, so I don't usually do that. Um, I chose red because I like red tulips a lot. So I'm going to continue with the red. I'm going to bring over my red palette here. And I'm just going to, well, first I'm going to wet the red box here. Get that pigment going. And I mean, for like, you know, one of those little kid packs, he's a pretty good watercolor. Like, I'm pretty impressed. I'm gonna take my little palette over here, test them out. Oh, that nice red color. Yeah. And what I like to do with the tulips is I like to do section by section, and I do sections that don't touch each other. Oops, I went out of that line, but oh well, can't fix it now. That's okay, it means it has character. We all saw it, we all know it's there now. And then I'm gonna go over here. Oop, I got some salt on there. Let's move that out of the way. I want to get that in my paintbrush. I'm gonna paint this little section here. And I'm mostly just painting the little sections, so then when I go to outline it when I'm done, I'll have a little area for the pen to still put its ink. You can just color in the whole area if you really want. There's really no, you know, super wrong way to do it. Got that real wet. Oh well, that one's gonna be a wet one. It's gonna be a blotcher. Okay. Alright, everything touches that one. Well, that was a mistake. Alright, well, I'll just do this one then. As you can see, I'm still learning which spots are where. Oh, I see we got some musicians in my chat. Excellent. I approve. I love music. I love going to the symphony. Some of my favorite things. I like the symphony. I've been to the opera. I love going to the ballet. Ooh, look at that. All these cool musicians. Very nice. Alright, I can do this little background area. That's a thing I can do. That nice and colored in. And now we check and see how my drying is doing. Alright, looks like the bottom ones, those dried pretty fast. Chucking water around here with my paintbrush. Gotta be careful. I might get some blotches where they're not supposed to be. Then they become colorful bubbles. Alright, so I'm gonna do the front here. Oh, I put a fingerprint in that one. Let's just fix that. Look at that. You won't even notice. See, even I make mistakes. See if I can get some water in that brush. I was trying to paint like it was an acrylic. Shame on me. Got too much water in the brush now. See if I can paint this little back area. Someone asked who likes anime or drawing it. Oh, that's right up my alley. That is my style of drawing. Should check out my website. In fact, while I let my paint dry for a moment, you can take a look at my beautiful sections I've got so far. Oh, I like all sorts of anime. Let's see. Does this work? Did I use the right thing? No, I did not. Hold on, I can't remember my own commands. Oh, I used the wrong thing. Hold on. There we go. Did it work? Dang it. I was hoping it would work. Oh, there it is. Those are all my social medias. Oh, we have a JoJo fan. Excellent. I love that show. My personal favorite show? I loved Full Metal Alchemist. I prefer the Brotherhood version because it's just like the manga. Do like me some JoJo's. It's the recent one. I gotta catch up on My Hero. I've been watching the Madoka show that's come out recently. I love the fact that Crunchyroll just exists in general. Like, that just amazes my old person brain. Alright, let's fill in the rest of these flowers. Oops, I can't see my thing. There we go. Alright. Now that my flowers have dried more, I can finish filling these in. I apologize who are watching the video later. I paused to do some things in the chat and also let my flowers dry. Which was also, for good reason. Because they were still full of water. Got that part. And then I'll do this big one back here. Honestly, once these dry up, we're basically done. We just gotta put some outlines on it and then sign it. Yeah, I apologize, this class is a little longer than the last one. Watercolors take some time to dry. Once I do this, we're going to go in and do some layers to make some darker areas. While it starts to dry out a little bit, I'm going to go in any of these tulip petals that are in the back. I'm going to layer down some more paint. Make them a little darker. But just a little. Just to give them a little bit of depth. Give them a little bit of variation in their petals. They look a little different. All right. And now I can put my brush down, wash it out, dry it off. And now I'm going to get the supply I did not talk about earlier. So in my supply list, I talked about having a 0.3 non-water soluble pen. And I think most of these, like if you get like the Sakura pens, the multi-liners or things like that, is what I'm looking for. Basically like these little felt tip pens is what I was aiming for. If you do not have one that is not water soluble, all you have to do is wait for this to dry. My picture is still a little wet. As you can see, it's kind of shiny, so I'm going to wait a couple seconds. Sometimes if you need this to dry faster, getting out a hairdryer will help speed that along. It's a ancient technique of watercolor is ye old hairdryer. Just be careful you don't have any puddles of water you'll blow around. Be very gentle with it. So what I will do then is, because I'm very much a cartoonist at heart, you don't necessarily have to ink it. You can leave it as it is if you like the way it is. I love to have a solid outline. So on my dry areas, where my pencil is, I'm going to use my 0.3. I'm going to ink a little bit. I'm going to try to not get into the wet areas just yet so my ink doesn't fuzz out. What is called a capillary action, which is when it goes and like does that kind of fuzziness that spreads out. Gonna lightly ink on all my lines. I'm not even like filling in all the lines either. I'm kind of leaving little open areas. This can also be done with like calligraphy ink if you happen to have a calligraphy pen, like a common inking pen for artists. You can have like the calligraphy nibs and use those. Those can get really artsy. You can use a brush and India ink if you're one of those particular type of artists. That's totally cool. This part is up to whatever drawing tool preference. Heck, you could probably even use a ballpoint pen if you wanted. Honestly, they're non-water soluble, so go to town. I just happen to really like multi-liners. So this is the ones that I like to use the best. So I'm just going to slowly go around here. As you see, I'm attempting to avoid doing the petals just yet because they are still wet. But I'm just going to kind of come up, go around here, go up around here, and oh, they're pretty dry now. I think I can touch them. And I'm going to come up, and I'm going to come up. And now it's time to touch the petals with my pen. Let's work it. Yeah. Your paper might be a little soft, so don't press too hard. And your paper might be a little wobbly, and that's okay. You can easily, once this dries, you can flatten it by putting some heavy books on it. That sometimes happens with watercolors. The paper does get a little wobbly. It is full of water, and paper can only hold so much, even watercolor paper. It's kind of like when a cloud only can hold so much water and then it starts to rain. When paper holds so much water, it starts to buckle. Then, come around here. I'm almost done here. Look at how pretty this is. Look at this. We're making a pretty flower drawing. And you can do this technique with any picture that you come up with, that you draw. If you decide, oh, I really like this, but I want to, say, maybe do a watercolor on a different piece of paper, you now know how to transfer your image. You now know how to do a flat watercolor of your image. Look at these skills we've learned today. So many skills. And these skills can be applied in so many different ways. And that's the kind of stuff that I aim to teach you with. Is not only are we making projects, I want to give you skills to use in other things. Everything can be crossed over into different zones of art. Now you will note I am rotating this quite a bit. I always rotate my paper when I ink, mostly because I don't want to put my hand in the ink and then leave splotches all on my paper. Because I've done that, and I've been a sad panda because of it. And you know what? If you mess up on a line, that's okay. That means that's a line you made, and it's yours. Not all of my lines are perfect. I'm gonna own them. That's my line. I drew that there. Almost forgot one. There we go. And I think that's all my lines. Yep, I've got them all in. So once again, the one last thing I need all of you to do, now that our picture is done, I need you to sign it. Just in the bottom somewhere. Put a date on it. Doesn't have to be the exact day. I just like to put the year. Because this is your art. You made it. This is yours. And now you know when you made it, so that if you come back and do something similar later, you can see if you've improved, which you probably will, and you won't realize it. But this is yours. You made it with your own hands. And now, last but not least, we're going to free it from its board. And what I like to do is I'll start at the topmost piece of tape that I've placed on here, and I will pull from the top and gently pull away from my watercolor. Just very gently, very slowly, pull away. This is also why I go in a circle when I put my tape down, because then I just go one after the other. And then I very gently pull away. Start at the bottom here. Hold down my paper very gently. Pull away. And if it tears at your board, that's alright. That's what the board's for. As long as it doesn't ruin the paper, that's what matters. And then last but not least, and there we go. We have a beautiful painting of tulips. Ta-da! Congratulations, you've painted a painting. And with that, we're going to head back to the computer. Oh, I got some water on it. There we go. We're going to head back to the computer where we can do our final showings of our paintings. So this was my second one. This was my first one. As you can see, I've already improved. So for second one, this was my first one. So here we go. This was my first one. This was my second one. Look at it, I even got better brush strokes already. And I got a nice darker background. And look how pretty that is. put that on a card. So I want to thank everyone for coming to my class today. I had an absolutely fantastic time. Thank you for hanging out with me for so long. It's about an hour and looks like 17 minutes is my timer running on my recording. So, once again, thank you so much for coming by. I hope that your paintings came out absolutely lovely. I'm sure that they did, because everyone has beautiful art inside of them, even if they don't think they do. They do. I believe in you. Aw, thank you. I appreciate that. Someone in the chat go, thank you for teaching. I'm so glad to hear that. So, uh, underneath this video, so just below here, because it will be recorded and then put on my YouTube probably within the next couple days from when this was originally streamed. There will be a description of the music I used in the background, as well as the supply list that I used to make this particular item. If you are watching this live, the next stream for this, I should have a class next Wednesday and Thursday, just like I did this week. I don't know which days they'll be, but I'm thinking of doing a shading tutorial, and we're going to do some printmaking. That's what I have in mind. So I'm going to be working on some samples this weekend, and I'll be writing up my syllabus for next week. So keep an eye on my social media, specifically my Facebook and Twitter, where I will have links to my information, and we will have more classes next week for Art with Karmada. Thank you again for coming. I cannot tell you how much I am so happy that you have come to join me in sharing my art. I hope that you continue to do art outside of my class and have a fantastic time. Thank you. Now, go out there and have some fun as best you can and make lots of pretty things.